I don't know why I had to take the damn music box. It was pretty, sure, beautifully made. It wasn't like I could have wound it up to hear the sound it made because I was in the middle of robbing a house. So it definitely wasn't the tune it played. It looked old, possibly valuable, though how would I know? But something possessed me to take it when I found it in that child's room. I regret it now, of course. I'd give it back if I could. Why had I been robbing a house? I wasn't desperate, just tired. I had a job, cleaning houses, and I was studying, but most of the money went for rent, utilities and university, books and fees, etc. At the end of the month, I was left with $1 or $2 if I was lucky. So I lived paycheck to paycheck. And though it wasn't the best way to live, I was getting by. But I was tired. I was tired of always calculating in my head. I was tired of browsing several shops for discounted groceries and food that tastes like cardboard. But I bought it because it was cheap and it didn't kill me. So how bad could it be? I was tired of skipping meals at a time because I had bought a monthly ticket for public transportation since it was so cold that my hair froze when I was walking to university. I was tired of having to do laundry in the middle of the night because that's when the electricity and water are the cheapest. I was tired of turning off my heater and sleeping with 5 layers of clothing because I had to pay next semester's fees. You get the gist. I was simply exhausted of anyways having to choose between most things people took for granted. So, when I was cleaning the Fester's house and happened to find an envelope filled with several $100 bills taped to the backside of a family picture hanging on the wall, I knew that I would take it. Do I feel ashamed? I do now, but back then all I could think about was how I could finally turn on the heater again, so I wouldn't have to freeze in my own home. Had you asked me before if I would ever steal, I would have been appalled. But we all think that we're better than we really are. I know that now. I didn't take it that day, of course. That would have been stupid. The company I cleaned for rotated the cleaners. You cleaned a different house every time. They kept a record of who was cleaning which house, though. There was a virtual schedule sent to everyone, and I knew that HR kept an Excel list, and I had seen it. So, had I taken that money then, there would have been no other suspect than me. No, I knew I had to be patient, and I would find an opportunity. I did fear that someone else would find the money before I did, though I don't think it was too likely, as most of the cleaners only dusted the pictures but never took them off the walls. Neither did I, to be honest. I had just discovered it by accident. I had finished with the living room and was going to move to the bedrooms upstairs, when I noticed that the picture had fallen down. The glass didn't break and I hadn't heard it fall, though the second part was not surprising since I was listening to music on my MP3 player. Empty houses could be creepy, so I preferred to have music blast in my ears. Also, cleaning was easier that way. Anyway, the picture was on the floor, face up, which I now realize was also weird, though it didn't strike me as odd back then. I picked it up and felt something on the back. Curiosity got the best of me and I checked what it was and found the cash. I put the picture back where it belonged and continued to clean. When you clean someone's place, you learn a lot about the person. You learn more than what they even tell their closest friends, trust me. I'd never let anyone else clean my apartment. The Fishers were no exception. I knew that the husband and wife slept in separate beds because I had to make them. I knew that they had 2 daughters, one liked chaos and the other was very tidy. I never had to do much in her room. And I knew from their mail that they would go on vacation soon, for a week. The tickets to some kind of big fair had arrived in the mail. I was not on to clean their house that week, which I took as a sign of the universe that I was supposed to be doing this. It was not hard in the end. We had several copies of the keys in case they got locked in or lost. It was easy to take them. I know that they would get checked regularly, but always at the end of the week, at which point they would be back where they belonged. And 2 days after the start of the exhibition, on a Wednesday night, I put my plan into action. The house felt even emptier that night. I listened intently when I entered through the back door, but there was nobody there. I tiptoed to the family picture, the 4 of them, beaming at the photographer, reached behind it without taking it off, and grabbed the envelope, my heart beating like crazy. I was sure someone was going to grab my hand any minute and ask what I was doing. I checked the cash in the envelope. 10 $100 bills. I was holding $1,000 in my hand. It was almost over. I started to walk towards the door, when I thought I heard something from the tidy girl's room. I stopped, dead in my tracks, holding my breath. There it was again. Rustling. I don't know how long I stood there frozen, but eventually I forced myself to move. I crept towards her room. Her door was open and I can see the moonlight coming in through the door. Who was in there? I was right next to the door and I heard rustling clearer than before. I knew I had to look, but I didn't want to. I was convinced something was waiting for me there, not someone, because a person would have shown themselves by now. Finally, I decided to just get it over with and stepped forward to look into the room. Nothing. There was nobody there. The window was slightly open. It was one of those that could be tilted from the top. The family had simply forgotten to close the window and the breeze was coming through, probably causing that rustling sound. I almost laughed out at my own stupidity. I turned to leave and that's when I saw a little flash of gold. I turned back and saw the music box. One of those old-fashioned ones that are egg-shaped. It was sitting on the little desk, and I didn't remember ever seeing it in the girl's room before. I walked into the room, and without even really knowing what I was doing, I grabbed the music box and stuffed it into my pocket. I left the house, carefully locked the back door, and made my way out of the backyard without being seen. At least, I didn't see anyone see me. I took a long, hot shower at home, not caring about how much it cost. The music box was forgotten. I turned on the heater and made myself a nice cup of tea and then looked again at the envelope. I don't remember much else from that evening, only that I slept well for the first time in a long time. They never caught me. I spent the next few days in anxious anticipation. Every time I went to work, I expected the police to wait for me. But they never did. I was even assigned to clean their house that week. And I was so worried, but nothing happened. The house was empty as usual. I started to relax and to think that I had made it. The evening after cleaning their house was when I remembered that music box. I didn't recall taking it out of my pocket, but I did, as it was sitting on my nightstand. I don't know why I stole it. Though I did admit it looked beautiful. It was about as big as a circle I could make with my hand. It was made from jade or some other green gemstone like that. There was a golden circle on the top and another one where there was an opening. It had 4 legs and they were golden too. I'm not sure, but it looked like real gold. There was no key to wind it up, so I assumed it was one of those that would play music when you opened it. I wonder what sound it would make. I opened the music box delicately, anticipating the music. There was none. The little dancer was twirling, so at least part of the mechanism worked, but there was no sound. I was strangely disappointed. Though it didn't last long, the insides of the music box were painted over, so it looked like the ballerina was dancing on a theater stage. The inside of the top half were the stage and the curtains. The lower half looked like there was an audience in front of the dancer. The dancer had a green dress speckled with gold, long pale legs and long arms like they usually have, black hair in a bun and with a little golden crown, but she didn't have a face. At first I thought the years had chipped away the face, or washed away the paint that used to be her face. But when I looked closer, I could see that where the face should have been, the smooth stone was carving inwards. It looked like it had been purposely designed to not have a face. I shivered despite the heater running. Who would make a music box with a dancer that didn't have a face? And why would a little girl want to keep it? I didn't sleep so well that night, though I didn't really think it had anything to do with the music box. The next day, I was tired and irritated, though that wasn't an unusual state for me, as you know by now. I worked during the day and had classes until 10, so by the time I got home, I was ready to go to bed. The heater was running, making my tiny studio flat warm and cozy. I decided to make a cup of tea before bed. After I put on the kettle, I sat down on my reading chair. I didn't have a sofa, so apart from my bed, this was the only seating. And I grabbed the novel I had been reading since last year. Just after I read the first sentence, I heard a high sound, and I thought it was the tea kettle. But I was wrong. I frowned, and then I heard it again. There was a succession of high notes. It sounded really strange, and it took me a couple of seconds to recognize that it was coming from the music box. The hair on my arms and neck stood up. I was sure I had closed it the night before, and yet here it was, open and playing a strange melody. The high notes were shrill, but I can hear some really low notes in the background. It was slow, too. The sound was dragging, as if something was wrong with the mechanism, so it was slowing it down. But the dancer was moving at normal speed, the same as yesterday. I froze and watched her turn around and around every time her no-face disappeared in a turn. I was sure that when she turned back to the front, she would have pitch-black eyes and a huge mouthful of teeth. But there was no face at all. The whistle of the tea kettle brought me back to reality, and I could move again. The music, if you can call it that, had stopped, and the dancer was facing me, not moving anymore. And though it didn't have eyes, I can tell that it was staring at me. Before I got the tea kettle, I closed the music box and put it in the drawer of my nightstand. I wanted to make sure that the music box was locked away, just in case it would start again after I got the tea kettle. I thought about throwing it out the window, but part of me still thought that it was too valuable. I was shaking, even though the flat was warm, and I was sure I would not be able to sleep. But after drinking some tea, I felt much better. I probably just left it open and forgot. Maybe the heat got it working again. I theorized, and even managed to laugh at my own stupid fear. It was just a toy after all. A toy couldn't be dangerous. Though I kept waking up at night expecting something to happen. Nothing did. The music box was still in the drawer the next morning, and I was even more convinced that nothing supernatural was going on. Like any protagonist in a horror film, I chose to go with the rational explanation. I even went as far as to think that it was maybe my own guilt, because I sold something I didn't really need. I didn't have work that day, only classes in the evening, so I decided to go to the library and work on a paper that was due. Instead of writing the paper, I spent the whole morning researching haunted music boxes, but I found nothing relevant to me. Sure, there were quite some accounts of music boxes playing on their own, but there was no other music box that had a dancer with no face. I also looked for reasons why a music box would start playing on their own suddenly, and there were some satisfying explanations. By the time my classes had started, I was convinced that I had just overreacted. I went for a drink after classes, to the surprise of my friends. I told them that I had won some money in a lottery game. Not much, just a little, but enough to afford some drinks. Thinking about it now, I was probably just afraid to go home. The rational part in me might have been louder, but the other part, the one that believed that something strange was going on, was still pulling the strings, and I didn't want to be alone with that music box for too long. Eventually, I had to go home. Fortunately, I was tipsy and I fell onto bed without even taking my clothes off, but not before I had turned on the heater. Or so I thought. I woke up in the middle of the night, still a bit dazed, but positively freezing. I can see my own breath. I thought I turned on the heater, I thought. Strange. I was about to get up and turn on the heater when I saw it. The music box. It was sitting on the table, next to the reading chair. It was dark in my apartment, but since I didn't have blinds, only curtains on my windows, it was not too dark to see that music box was open. But the dancer was missing. A cold hand grabbed my heart, so that now I was freezing on the inside as well. Where was the dancer? Did I drunkenly do this? Did I break it and forget about it? As if it had waited for me to notice that crucial thing was missing, the music box started to play that weird high note again, followed by the lower ones, slow and dragging every note. I started shaking. Where's the dancer? What happened to it? A movement from the corner next to the kitchenette caught my eye. It was too dark to see, but there was something there. It can't be, I thought. I could see the figure in the dark now, forming with my recognition. The arms too long, and the legs too long, joined together in a pirouette. No, 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 I thought over and over again. Please, no. It was moving, though, and it was definitely moving closer. I could see flashes of the green dress and golden flakes, though both colors looked grayish, dirtier. The music was still playing, the melody repeating itself, and it was the only sound in the flat, for the thing approaching was silent. I tried to run for it, but I couldn't even move. I was glued to this bed. The tears were turning into icy pearls on my cheeks. For every couple of notes played, the thing would come closer. It was twirling, and what should have looked ridiculous looked terrifying. I still could not see the face, and I didn't know what was worse: to see whatever its real face was, or to see that it had really had none. I was shaking all over, even on the inside. I opened my mouth to scream, but there was no sound, as if the melody from the box was sucking in all sound, just to produce its own. Twirl, 4 feet away. Twirl, 3 feet away. Twirl, 2 feet away. Twirl, 1 foot away. Twirl. My mobile phone rang and I blinked. Suddenly, the thing was gone. The flat was empty and warm. The only proof that I wasn't mad was that the music box was still sitting on the living room table. It was closed now, and not in a million years would I have tried to open it to see if that dancer was still in there. I checked my mobile, and it was one of my friends calling. They had stayed out longer than I had. As I walked over to the now silent music box, I picked up the phone. Yeah? Yeah, I said, a bit out of breath. Hey! Lisa, my best friend, yelled into the phone. Listen to this! All I can hear was thumping and some distorted electronic music. I laughed, tears streaming down my face. Normally, I would have been so mad at her for waking me up, but I couldn't have been more grateful tonight. I grabbed a cloth and put it around the music box as I didn't want to touch it, and I left it on the other side of my apartment door. I didn't want to throw it out the window, but I was scared that it would break, and that I would set whatever lived in there free by breaking it. And since I didn't want it in my flat, I felt safer with it outside my door in the hallway. Maybe someone would steal it, I hoped. Lisa was saying something, though I couldn't really hear. I asked her to come over, and even though she was drunk, she heard the fear in my voice, and 15 minutes after, she was standing at my flat. I didn't tell her what happened. I told her I was going to tell her in the morning, and that she would only forget if I told her now. She agreed. The real reason I didn't want to tell her is that I was so scared I was going to make it more real. That I was going to invite that thing back. She stayed over, and I felt so much safer, knowing that I wasn't alone anymore. Nothing else happened that night. In the morning, I told Lisa I had been feeling weird because I was tipsy. She teased me about it before she left, and I knew she would continue to do so for a while, but it was better to be teased about being silly than being crazy. When Lisa was leaving, we had to open the apartment door, and I saw that music box was still there. Nobody had taken it. I saw Lisa notice it and frown. She didn't ask me anything about it. Could it have been a bad dream? Had I just been drunker than I thought I was? I didn't think so. I wasn't prone to hallucinating, even when drunk. I thought the best would be to return the music box to its owner before it drove me insane. So when I left for work, I put it in my bag. I wasn't due to clean their house today, but I was determined to swap it to someone who was due to clean it this week. They wanted someone to come on Wednesday, so I only had to wait one more day. After cleaning, I stopped by the office, the music box heavy in my bag. I asked my boss if I can swap my Thursday for Wednesday, as I had a paper due on Friday, and she was sympathetic. When she opened the Excel file, however, her face darkened. Is something wrong? I asked, clutching my bag stronger. She looked up at me and frowned still. Well, I am really sorry, honey, but you won't be able to swap this Wednesday. Oh, I murmured, already trying to think of another unassuming way I can get back into their house. You see, the only house we have on Wednesday is usually the Fisher's house. She stopped and looked at me expectantly. I felt my face flush. Did they find out about the money? Is that why? Then why wasn't she firing me? When she didn't get the reaction she wanted, she sighed heavily. I was getting ready to be fired, feverishly thinking of excuses. It's the anniversary of the day their daughter disappeared. What? My jaw hit the floor, and I started to feel a little sick. You didn't know. She gestured for me to sit down, and I did, as I wasn't sure I can keep standing. 3 years ago, their youngest daughter vanished. 1 minute she was playing in the room, and the other she was gone. The window was open, but apparently that wasn't unusual. They believed someone took her. It was all over the papers, honey. How did you miss it? I was shaking my head slowly. Though I did vaguely recall a missing child's case a few years ago, TV stations picked it up. The parents being suspected. It was slowly coming back to me. That's why her room is always so tidy, I whispered, finally understanding. They kept the room for when she would return. Nobody lived in there. So why would there be anything much to clean? My boss bent over her desk to tap my hand. I'm sorry, dear. I thought you knew. They never found her? No. There was never much as a trace. The parents were suspects in the beginning, and I'm sure some still believe they killed the girl, but they were cleared. The scariest thing was that she seemed to have dissolved in the thin air. The mother claimed that she had seen the girl in her room as she was carrying dry laundry to her bedroom. And then when they got back a few minutes after, the girl was gone. That was also one of the reasons why people suspected the parents. There was something off about their story, how she disappeared. Poor family. It must have been so hard to lose their child and be treated like they're responsible. I never connected it, I said finally, just to say something. Do you want to swap to Friday then? My boss asked, moving to the daily business already. No, it's okay. I think I'll manage somehow, I said, trying to force a smile. Anything else? She asked, and I knew I was being dismissed, so I shook my head and said goodbye. I went to the bathroom because I needed a few minutes to collect myself and to decide what I was gonna do. The little girl had disappeared from her room. I had found a mysterious music box that was clearly haunted in her room. Whatever was in that box had taken her. I'm sure of it. Maybe if I had given it back, it would leave me alone. I decided that I would go to the Fetcher's house and return the music box. I would tell the family that I had taken it while cleaning. If they complained and I got fired, I would accept it because I did deserve to get fired. I wasn't going to say anything about the money though, because I'd have to return it otherwise. Leaving the office, I went to their house immediately. There was no point in losing time. I knocked on the front door and waited. I rang the bell a couple times, and finally the mother opened it. She only vaguely resembled the woman on the family picture where the envelope full of cash had been hidden behind. It looked like, with her daughter, something had also taken all the color from her. Like when you try to take a picture artistic, and you remove most of its saturation from it. That's what she looked like. Mrs. Fesher, I still asked politely. She nodded. How can I help you? Her voice was barely above a whisper. Can I come in, please? I clean your house sometimes. I'm with the cleaners and company. She stepped aside and let me enter. I closed the door behind me. Even though she was at the home, the house still seemed terribly empty. Or maybe I was just projecting now that I knew what happened here. I didn't take off my coat, and she didn't offer me to sit down. She just stood there in the hallway hugging herself. I opened my bag and searched for the music box. At first I couldn't find it and I started to panic. But it had just slipped into one of the side pockets. So I took it out, removed the bag and the cloth and showed it to her. Her eyes grew wide. Where did you get this? She asked and looked at me. I'm so sorry. I took it from your daughter's room. I don't even know why, I just did. You can tell the company if you want. I'm so sorry. I just want to give it back. She shook her head as I tried to pass her the music box. Maybe you should sit down, she said, and disappeared into the kitchen. I put the music box on the living room table and sat down, still in my coat. I heard her setting up tea, but I was contemplating just leaving anyway. As she emerged again with a tray and 2 cups, she sat it on the table next to the music box and sat down on one of the chairs opposite to me. It was Marin's, my daughter's, she said, but she wasn't looking at me or the music box. She just showed up with it one day and wouldn't tell me where she got it from. She said she found it, which I thought meant that she had stolen it. None of the neighbors were missing it, though. Nor was anyone at school, so I let her have it. No harm in that, she said, and a sad smile crossed her face. She loved it. Really loved it. even though it didn't work anymore. You know it doesn't play music. She glanced at it the first time since sitting down. Then the nightmare started. She was scared of the dancer because it had no face. I took it from her, you know. I hid it at first, but she would always find it. Then I threw it away. Or I tried, but she would go through the garbage and get it back again. Of course she told me that it wasn't her, that it just appeared in her room. A child's imagination can be very persuasive, she said and looked directly into my eyes. She knows, I thought. You know what's strange? She asked, but didn't wait for me to answer. The day Maren disappeared, I passed her room and saw her playing with her dolls. I also saw that the music box was open. The dancer was not there. I noticed this and thought that maybe Maren had broke it because she was scared. I started, but she continued ignoring me. On my way back to the bedroom, I heard this strange music coming from her room. I looked and Maren was gone. But the music box was open, and the tiny dancer with no face was making her turns to this eerie music, too slow as if it was somehow still not working properly. She stopped talking and started staring at the music box. The hairs on my arm stood up. I was sure it would spring open, and I was close to throwing my hands over it so it couldn't. You see, the strange thing is, after Maren went missing, we had searched the whole house, every room. The music box went missing too. I have not seen this thing since the day my daughter disappeared. Now she looked at me, smiling again. This time the smile wasn't sad. Her eyes had a feverish look, and the smile stretched her lips, making her mouth seem too wide. She reached over to the tea kettle as it started to whistle. The smile was gone now, replaced by some expressionless mask she had worn before. "Excuse me," she said and walked over to the kitchen. I did not wait for her to return. I bolted out of there and ran. I ran and ran until my lungs were burning and the cold air was hurting my throat. I was sweating, but I was shivering too. I found a bus stop and took a bus that would get me home. Even though there were plenty of people on the bus, and it was warm, I was still shivering. I was gonna get sick, I thought. I arrived home still shaken but relieved that I had returned the box, and that I wasn't gonna suffer the same fate as that little girl. I turned on the heater and just threw my clothes on the floor and went for a nice warm shower. I stayed there long enough for my float to warm up. I felt much better, almost a bit upbeat. I had decided to skip classes today and just stay in and read. I deserved a quiet evening. I left the bathroom toweling my hair, and that's when I saw it. The music box was sitting on the table in front of my reading chair. I had definitely not brought it back. I remembered her words. Of course she told me that it wasn't her, that it just appeared in her room. There was no point in running. I dropped the towel and turned around as if it would help if I didn't look. I could hear it opening, though. I knew if I turned my back, I would not see that tiny dancer with no face. The room turned cold and darker. My eyes closed as the music started to play. Ghouls, I hope you enjoyed this extra long Monday video. I really liked this story. It was really interesting. I also used to have one of those little egg jewelry box thingies. I think it used to be a music box, but there was nothing, like all the stuff was taken out of it, and it was just like the egg outside part. So I really liked this story. It kind of reminded me of that. I'm sure I still have it lying around somewhere, but now maybe I don't want to find it. But let me know if you enjoyed this story. Do you enjoy longer stories? Do you like the shorter stories? Let me know so I know what to do, ghouls, because I think like 20 minutes is a good Monday video, but it's nice to have a nice like 30-35 minute video every once in a while. Question of the day. Would you ghouls like me to do more face videos, more unboxings of things? You know, tags, I don't know, like trendy videos? Let me know, because I kind of want to do some. So let me know in the comments below. But as always, ghouls, the last video is on the top left. The next video will be on the bottom left. All my social medias are on the screen as well as in the description box below. And remember, there's always someone or something watching you.